Let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it. He did it. That's the Dwight. Beaverson. He's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart. Streaming. It's Mountaineer pride. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People are the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into a CRW live stream here on September 18th. Going to discuss, of course, the snap counts post-pit as we took down the Panthers in the 106th edition of the Backyard Brawl. A sweet West Virginia victory there with an awesome atmosphere in Morgantown. We'll talk about the snap counts played during that game, and then we will talk some injury updates as well. And then, of course, I'll provide a depth chart projection based on those two, as we like to do in these early week streams here. That's kind of been the schedule thus far this week. For those of you that haven't followed us here on the CRW, be sure to do so if you're a West Virginia fan. Before we get into it, remind you guys, if you're in here live or on a playback, hit that thumbs up button, give us a like. Really helps this video's performance and future videos performances on the channel. And if you're a West Virginia fan, be sure subscribe. Helps us and you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. And in regards to some of that Mountaineer sports content you'll find here on the Country Roads Webcast, just to kind of let you know what a week goes like here, if it's a game week for a West Virginia football. Started off early week with a stream discussing the snap counts for the previous game and provide some injury updates, and then provide a depth chart for the week ahead that we project out based on those two. Then after that, you'll get our game review podcast episode releasing either Monday or Tuesday. Typically looks like Tuesday this week. And then Wednesday or Thursday, you get the game preview podcast for the next week's game. Apologies for my dog barking in the background. Wife might have just pulled up outside. But then, of course, there is later in the week, following the release of our preview and predictions for the game, you can get the Q&A stream where we get a chance to get your all's predictions for that week's game and take your questions as well. And your questions are always welcome here on this stream, where we discuss snap counts, depth charts, and injury updates to begin the week. So that's just a kind of a brief look at some of the content you'll get from us West Virginia wise here on the Country Roads Webcast during a WVU football game week. But in regards to what we got here, let's kick it off with the injury updates. I know that's what a lot of people are probably wondering in regards to seeing Garrett Green go down in that previous game and being out for the rest of that game. His status, Neil Brown updated it today in his press conference. So I'll start with that. It appears to be a lower ankle injury for Garrett Green. Neil Brown basically kind of left it open, said it depends on the next few days. But just me reading the tea leaves, I don't see him playing Saturday. He said Garrett Green did not practice today. He's not going to practice tomorrow. But if he's able to practice Wednesday on, they would see what would happen then. But it just doesn't sound too likely. So I'm going to go ahead and say that he's probably going to be out, although it remains up in the air according to Neil Brown, depending on if he can practice Wednesday on. But if he cannot, of course, Nico steps into the starting role. Neil Brown said he's ready. And then, of course, that brings into question if Garrett Green is unavailable, the backup quarterback position. And, of course, that would be manned by Sean Boyle, the true freshman West Virginia has as the only scholarship quarterback on the roster. Besides Green and Mark Gill. So those are the 3 scholarship quarterbacks. So if something was to, knock on wood happen beyond that, Sean Boyle would have to be ready to step in. And Neil Brown talked a little bit about that and said, he asked him during the backyard brawl, if anything happens, are you ready? You're next. And he said he kind of had the wide eyes a little bit, but said now he more or less feels like that sunk in for him, and he's going to certainly be ready this coming Saturday if he ever was to have to be called upon. And Neil Brown also said he's going to get a quarter of the reps in practice this week with Nico getting 75% of the reps. So he'll at least have that going for him, which is exactly what Nico had this week when he was thrust into action. So West Virginia's found a way to win with that in the past. At least we can say that. Then moving on, the other injury updates Neil Brown provided was E.J. Horton and Traylon Ray. Both, we saw them play in the game a couple snaps. We'll talk about exactly how many momentarily. But he said both of their roles will continue to increase as they continue to get more and more healthy. They're on their way back now. Justin Johnson, he was talking about him. He actually, we didn't see him in the game. He said he remains out right now, didn't practice today, may not practice tomorrow, kind of similar to the story of Garrett Green right now, and he's questionable. Last week, he was not able to practice. That's why he didn't go in the game. So, and then finally, we get the big update on Montre Miller. Unfortunately, it's the one we were not hoping to hear. The cornerback that transferred in from Kent State. I spoke really highly of him throughout the offseason here on the Country Roads webcast. He's played nearly 900 snaps in college football and has never committed a pass interference penalty. Really highly graded on PFF, played good in Kent State's game against Power 5 competition when they've played him. So I was excited to see what he could do at WVU. Unfortunately, it's up in the air as if we'll ever get to see that, as Montre Miller will have season-ending surgery. He's going to be out for the remainder of this year, and this was supposed to be his final year of college football. So Neil Brown stated that they're going to petition the NCAA. He's going to put in a waiver, try and see if he can get an extra year. He obviously has a pretty good case, so hopefully he is able to get that extra year, and then maybe we will see him in a West Virginia uniform after all in 2024, but we'll not be seeing it in 2023. Montre Miller out for the remainder of the season at the cornerback position for West Virginia. And although Neil Brown didn't bring these up, I know WVU Football Going Deep and I have talked about this and discussed it, the status of Davis Mallinger. We know he had the season-ending knee injury last season. We're still awaiting his return, especially since he has been moved over to the wide receiver position, and that may be interesting. But in regards to himself and Tyreek Austin Cave, a linebacker that West Virginia fans may have been wondering about as well, neither one of those guys were dressed for the game Saturday. And I know I had previously been given an update that Tyreek Austin Cave was out with injury, although it's not been discussed by Neil Brown. Austin Cave and Davis Mallinger both in street clothes for Saturday's game, so it appears both those guys not ready to play yet. So there we have the injury updates that I wanted to get into. I will get into the snap counts for the game momentarily, and then I'll get into a projected depth chart. But if you are in here live, I want to encourage you, drop your questions, comments, concerns in the chat. I'll touch on them throughout here as we go throughout the stream. Won't stay with you guys too long. Try and make these snap count streams a little bit shorter in length if and when I can. But love to interact with you guys and wouldn't mind making them longer if you guys got stuff you want to discuss, but wanted to encourage that. And of course, like I said, like and subscribe if you haven't already to us here at the CRW. But let's get into the snap counts from the big win over Pittsburgh, the very important win for the West Virginia program and for Neil Brown. So this is what we had in the game against Pitt. Quarterback, of course, Nico ended up getting 59 of the snaps after Garrett Green went down after just 6 snaps. Jalen Anderson at the running back position actually ended up with the most snaps, and I think that is probably due to what we saw from C.J. Donaldson, where he got banged up a little bit and they didn't, reinsert him back into the game, more or less probably for precautionary reasons. So Jalen Anderson's up with 36 snaps to C.J. Donaldson's 31. Jaheim White gets 4 at the running back position. As I stated earlier, we've now since learned Justin Johnson still remains out with an injury for the Mountaineers. And then at the fullback position, Luke Hamilton did get 5 snaps late in the game. A lot of those when West Virginia was trying to run out the clock. I think on the final couple possessions is when I saw him in there. Love seeing him get on the field and lead block on some of those run plays for West Virginia. I've professed my love for him before throughout the offseason. I love West Virginia bringing back a fullback here throughout the 2023 season, But Wide receiver position, as you can see, a lot of these, they did not play as many people as they have in the past. They really kind of shrunk the depth chart, I guess you could say, in this game, and it worked out for him in a lot of areas. Wide receiver, you get 55 snaps from Devin Carter. He's the only wide receiver that played 50 snaps. You get 31 from Preston Fox, 30 from Cortez Bram, and 26 from Hudson Clement, who did start the game, get the start over Bram. 9 snaps for Rodney Gallagher. Then you get 3 from Jarrell Williams, 2 from Traylon Ray, and 2 from E.J. Horton. And E.J. Horton was targeted once. Looked like he had the coverage beat. Didn't quite get to come down with the grab there, but hopefully we'll see, as I said, and Neil Brown stated in his press conference earlier, his role expand and probably see more and more Traylon Ray. They love his talent. He's just still a little banged up, I believe. Then the tight end position, of course, we saw the 2 Mountaineer tight ends, Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis, really do some great things for the Mountaineers, not only blocking for the run game, but in the pass-catching area as well in Cole Taylor's terms, as he caught the touchdown for the Mountaineers, the lone touchdown pass of the game in the backyard brawl. He played 50 snaps as Traylon Davis played 31. The offensive line for West Virginia, now this is where it's interesting, did not rotate a lot. It was the starting 5, and then Nick Malone got in on 10 snaps. Some of those lined up as almost like a tight end there off the edge, but all starting 5 linemen played all the snaps there, all 65. So, when Nick Malone was in, he was in there in addition, not for anybody there, obviously. So 65 snaps, and I just lined it up from left to right, your left tackle through your right tackle, Wyatt Milam, Thomas Remick, Zach Frazier, Brandon Yates, and Doug Nestor. And shout out to the West Virginia offensive line and their performance in that game. And then, of course, as I said, Nick Malone with 10 snaps. Flipping it over to the defensive side here from the backyard brawl, 41 snaps for Sean Martin, 38 for Eddie V, and 31 for Mike Lockhart, the 3 starters there for your West Virginia Mountaineers along the defensive line. But you've been getting impact from a lot of these backup guys. Of course, Fatorma Molba, if you've been watching our weekly player grades videos, the past 2 weeks, he's been the highest graded Mountaineer on defense there. He got 15 snaps. And then how about Asani Redwood getting 15 snaps? He's someone we've been long awaiting to see make his Mountaineer debut. Racked up a ton of sacks in high school. Think he's going to be a real big weapon for West Virginia along this defensive line. He gets in on 15 snaps. Tommy Durage got in on 13 snaps. He's been very disruptive throughout these first 3 games for West Virginia, currently leading the team in sacks, if I'm not mistaken. He got 13 snaps, 7 from Day Hawkins, 3 from Jalen Thornton, and 2 from Hammond Russell to wrap up the snaps along the defensive line. And then here in the back end and the linebacking core is where West Virginia really stuck with their starters for the majority of this game, I guess I should say. As you see, bandit position, they was split a little bit there, but the rest of these were pretty starter eccentric, I guess you could say. 44 for Jared Bartlett at the bandit position, 23 for Tyron Bradley. And they were both actually, I remember them being in together at one point because they teamed up for a sack on Phil Dracovic, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was a TFL. But nonetheless, I thought I liked what I saw from both of those guys. And then your linebackers, Trey Lathan and Lee Koba, they've been the standouts, and they played all the snaps at the Mike Will linebacker position in this game. 57 snaps for Trey Lathan, mainly playing at the Mike, and 49 for Lee Koba, mainly playing at the Will. Spear spot, 35 for Hershey McLaurin, 16 for Lance Dixon, as they split the action there, but Hershey led the pace there. Cornerback position, Malachi Ruffin and Beanie Bishop play all 58 snaps, go the whole way from beginning to end for the Mountaineers there. Very interesting. We knew that there would be changes there. They talked about there being coverage adjustments, and it certainly looked like we saw some of those, and the coverage looked improved. I even paid attention to, we talked a lot about in the past, 3rd and 5, why were our corners 10 yards off the receiver? I saw when the down and distance was appropriate, our corners were pressed up on their receivers, and hopefully that continues. So I did like some of the adjustments that I saw. And, the other adjustment was making Malachi Ruffin the starter over Andrew Wilson-Lamp. He had outpaced him in snaps last game, and the defense looked better with Ruffin in there. And I think you could say the same again this game. And of course, he comes up with the impressive interception late in the game after Beanie Bishop, the other corner, had one earlier in the game. And I think Beanie Bishop's been an awesome transfer addition for West Virginia. I mean, how could you not agree? 2 interceptions for him already. I mean, he's halfway to tying the total West Virginia had as a team last season. West Virginia only had 4 interceptions all year last year. They've already topped that this season, and Beanie Bishop has 2 himself. And then, of course, rounding it up with our snap counts at the safety position. This is where we saw the other change. The coaching staff had talked about promotions and demotions. It looked like Marcus Floyd saw a promotion, and Keyshawn Cobb did not get to see any snaps in this game. Don't know if that will remain the case moving forward. I'd like to see both of those guys get in on the action, but Marcus Floyd did make plays when he got in there. He made the tip that led to the Malachi Ruffin interception and nearly intercepted that ball himself. He got 17 snaps, but Aubrey Burks and Anthony Wilson see the majority of the snaps at the safety position, 58 apiece. But Marcus Floyd did get in there on his return, and I think you may see more of him depending on the matchup for West Virginia. Anthony Wilson has done a good job for West Virginia at the safety position, but he's more of a attacking type safety, not the best in coverage. Marcus Floyd, I know he left some to be desired last year at the cat safety position, but he was a cornerback at Murray State before coming up to West Virginia and moving to safety. So, maybe there was an adjustment period for him there, but you got to think he's one of the better cover safeties, especially at the cat position. So probably see more of him when we're facing pass-heavy teams, maybe even against Texas Tech this week. And maybe that's why he was in more than Keyshawn Cobb, was they thought Pitt would really try and test them deep. We know a lot of Pitt's passes, percentage-wise, were going to be deep. So maybe that's why he played more than Keyshawn Cobb. Probably see more of a mix moving forward. But that's what we got as far as snap counts and injury updates here for this live stream. Let me hop back in here and see if we got anybody in the chat. Nobody in here looks like just yet. Kind of expected as much. That always seems to be the case when you do streams a little bit earlier in the day. But nonetheless, I appreciate you guys that are tuning in live and anyone that tunes in on a playback as well. I'm going to share my projected depth chart. Then I'll get out here before too much longer with you guys. But let me take a swig of my coffee in the meantime, between time. Obviously, the Carolina Panthers are playing on Monday Night Football tonight, if anyone was wondering why it wasn't WVU gear, and a little bit different than my normal, of course. But, nonetheless. Grant Wiley, Esquire, appreciate you, man. I haven't seen you in a while. Appreciate you always tuning in and chiming in. He says, Mulba and Tomey have been huge additions. They really have. I think that that's something that's gone on unheralded, is not only how great the West Virginia defensive line has been this season. They've been outstanding. We talked a ton about West Virginia's offensive line and how great it has been, and rightfully so. Neil Brown talked about in his press conference today, Zach Frazier had 14 knockdowns against Pitt, and Doug Nestor had 9. So the offensive line is performing great, but I think the defensive line, we need to sing their praises a little bit as well. They have really looked great through 3 games. I mean, even against Penn State's awesome offensive line and rushing attack, they were making plays. And, it was the Penn State passing attack that hurt us more than anything, as we all know. So I think West Virginia's defensive line and the linebacking core, for that matter, has been really good for the Mountaineers. I liked what I've seen from Koba and Latham. But, yeah, Mulba and Tomey have both been huge. I think their roles are going to continue to increase. Durjay has 2.5 sacks, through 3 games. Mulba's been, as I said earlier, the highest graded player on PFF the past 2 weeks, and he's only played, I think, 15 snaps or so in both games. So I think that both will see increased roles, and both are awesome additions. And I love it for West Virginia that they're able to bring in fresh set of guys that are, there's not a big drop-off. We were worried with the defensive line losing high-end guys, but I think that what we made up for that is we brought in some transfers that are, really good players. We may not have any great players on this defensive line necessarily, but we have a lot of really good players, and it helps a lot, especially when you're able to rotate them. You just worry when you get matched up against a team that runs hurry up and you're not able to run those guys in and out as much as you'd like. That's probably going to be tested right away here as we start Big 12 play against Texas Tech, so we'll see. But I think that, if those guys are able to get on the field, they're going to continue to make an impact. And I'm going to say watch out for Redwood as well. I know he made his debut, played 15 snaps, but I think he's going to really be a star. And West Virginia has done a great job building the trenches on both sides of the football. I think that that's a reason that, they're looking a little bit more improved this season, is because they have a good offensive line and a good defensive line. And if you're good in the trenches, you got a chance to be a good football team. So West Virginia's got a chance this season. We'll see. He's Grant Wiley Esquire also says it'll be interesting to see how the D-line handles the no huddle against TT. Very few subs. Exactly. I didn't read your comment before I said that, but we're certainly thinking alike with this matchup. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes for West Virginia, because I think a lot of Texas Tech's strengths are perceived weaknesses for West Virginia, and that's probably why this matchup has gone the way it has, 3 or 4 years in a row now. So definitely agree with that. But Also, to wrap up the snap counts streams, excuse me. I like to go with a depth chart projection based on, the snap counts from the previous games, the injury updates that we now know. So I like to provide a projected depth chart for, the following week's game. And this is what I've come up with for this week. Quarterback, I'm going Nico as a starter. Like I said, doesn't sound like Garrett's going to be ready to play. And even if he is, I think that he'll be there in a backup role potentially. So at the backup position, I put Garrett Green or Sean Boyle, the true freshman. Running back, I kept the same. Still CJ and Jalen look like the primaries there. Maybe Justin Johnson comes back this week. Maybe Jaheim White gets involved in a little bit more action, but those seem like the go-to guys there. X wide receiver position, almost went or at the one position because Graham did end up outpacing Clement in snaps, even though Clement did get to start. But I think, you can't really say either thing about either one's performance when West Virginia only threw, 10, 11 passes in the game, whichever it was. I think it was 11. But Clement did have a reception. I'm expecting him to maintain that starting position. So still got him starting at the X. I think Cortez Braham's got a great chance to, get the reserve snaps there. But EJ Horton, like I said, his role is going to continue to increase. I think he's going to be more of a specialized guy they put in certain areas where they think they can attack the defense over the top and really utilize his speed. I liked it when he got in this game. The route that he ran looked really crisp, and he was open. Like I said, the passes didn't work out, so had to throw him in on the depth chart somewhere. Slot position, Jarrell Williams and Noah Massey. That's how they continue to be listed on the West Virginia depth chart. That's why they're like that here. Even though we haven't seen a ton of either, I haven't seen Noah Massey outside of the Duquesne game at all. Inside wide receiver, the H position there that you see more of on the field. Preston Fox, obviously the starter there for the Mountaineers, and continues to play a lot of snaps, but we're also seeing an increase in snaps for Rodney Gallagher, and I think his role will continue to increase as the season moves along. Saw him catch a screen pass in this game, and they'll probably continue to have different designs for him on plays like that. And then at the Z receiver position, Traylon Ray still continuing to come back from his injury, but closer he gets to 100%, the more snaps he'll see. And of course, Devin Carter, the wide receiver one for West Virginia, probably the go-to guy for the Mountaineers there, if you can name one, at the wide receiver position. So, talking about promotions and demotions on my depth chart here, Jeremiah Aaron was listed as an or there at the second team position, but didn't see any snaps versus Pitt in the backyard brawl. Wasn't mentioned in the injury report, but for now, kind of off the depth chart. But I certainly think he'll find his way back onto the field sooner rather than later. And then at the tight end position, Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis remain the two guys there for West Virginia that you're going to see most of the time. And I think both of them have looked really good on this season as well. And, need to talk about them as much as we're talking about the West Virginia offensive line when we're talking about the West Virginia run game with what they've done, particularly with some of the play designs in the backyard brawl when you had them, sweeping in different directions. You had them leading, kind of stretch strong power plays to the outside, just all kinds of different ways West Virginia was utilizing them. And of course, we continue to see Cole Taylor's role expand in the passing game and then find different ways to get him the ball there. He actually led the Mountaineers in receiving in this game. I think his role will continue to increase. He's going to be a great weapon in the passing game. One more second. Let me take a swig of my coffee, and then I'll continue on in this depth chart projection. There we are. Much better. Much better. Moving on. Offensive line. I don't think I made any changes really here to what it has been. Left tackle, Wyatt Milam and Nick Malone, 1 and 2 there. Left guard, still Thomas Remick and Jaquay Hubbard as the backup guard. I've got him kind of as the swing guy at either guard position. Center, Zach Frazier, and then I think Brandon Yates would be the reserve if anything was to happen. I think he'd slide over. But, of course, he's your starting right guard for the Mountaineers, and like I said, Jaquay Hubbard behind him. And then at right tackle, I got Doug Nestor and Johnny Williams because I want, Johnny Williams on this too deep. I think he's going to be a player down the line for West Virginia, maybe starting as early as next season when I'm expecting him to grab one, the starting tackle role potentially there at the right tackle spot. It'll be a nice battle between him and Nick Malone probably, but as we've seen, Nick Malone is probably the swing guy and almost could list him as second team there. Like I have Hubbard at the guard spot. So, but that's what I have with offensive line. Flip it over defensive side, defensive end. I've got obviously Sean Martin and Tomey is 1 and 2 at that spot. Defensive tackle. This is where made a bit of an adjustment. Last week, it was just Day Hawkins or Jalen Thornton at the second team position, but I think you got to put Asani Redwood's name into the mix now. I think he's a guy that's going to continue to play more, like I said, and he played 15 snaps in this game, outpaced both Hawkins and Thornton in the backyard brawl. So he's certainly someone the coaching staff has faith in to play him in such an important game like that. So Eddie V, obviously the starter, but I've got the oars between the names on those three guys there. And then nose tackle position, Mike Lockhart and the aforementioned Mulba. They've both been very strong for the Mountaineers this season. We talked about Mulba's grade, but Mike Lockhart has really made some impressive plays, especially that one in the backyard brawl, 3rd and 1, busts in the backfield for a 3-4 yard tackle for a loss. That was awesome to see. Then the bandit position, it's been Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley. Tyron Bradley's done a good job as they transfer in. Thought we'd see more James Hurd there this season, the true freshman. Maybe we will as the season continues. But, being there in person at the game Saturday, there was a size difference between Bartlett, Bradley, and himself. So maybe they're just waiting on him to continue to develop with Coach Mike Joseph, and then they'll put him in more game action. And then, of course, I finally did make the change, as you've seen, here on these depth chart updates throughout the season. I still kept Lee Koba at the mic and Trey Lathan at the wheel, but I think I've seen enough now to finally swap those two spots. So I went ahead and did that now. Now I've got Lee Koba at the wheel linebacker position. Seems like he's been playing more there, and Lathan's been playing more at the mic, backed up by Joff Rivera. And then at the mic, I've got Ben Cutter or Caden Beiser as the backup there. Did have Tyreek Austin Cave or Caden Beiser, but like I said, Austin Cave out with injury. So I figured maybe they'll get some Ben Cutter some more reps in another way there. So why not? He was in the mix at the wheel linebacker position, so I threw him in there. Then at the spear position, it's been the two guys, same ones all season virtually. Hershey McLaurin's been your starter. Lance Dixon, depending on the matchup, they've had pretty close snap count, but in this most recent game, Hershey McLaurin really outpaced Dixon, but both those guys you can count on there at that spot. I think cornerbacks, like I said, your starters appear solidified now for the time being, with Beanie Bishop definitely being your main one and looking like a ball hawk at the position. And then Malachi Ruffin really had a great game in his first game as starter this season. And I've got Andrew Wilson-Lamp now as a second teamer. Began the season as a starter for the Mountaineers, had his struggles, but hopefully continues to improve when he is thrust back into the action there. And then Jacoby Spells as the backup at the other side. We know he has a high ceiling, just waiting on him to, have that light bulb come on. Still a little young, so maybe just not quite ready yet, but he will be a contributor down the line. And then it's a safety position. I just put Marcus Floyd in with an or. With Keyshawn Cobb there at the free position because, like I said, Keyshawn Cobb didn't get any snaps in this game. West Virginia only played 3 safeties. They had been only playing 3 safeties, but of course, those 3 had been Burks, Wilson, and Cobb. With Floyd's return, it was Burks, Wilson, and Floyd. So that led to me, throwing Marcus Floyd in with an or between him and Keyshawn Cobb's name at the free position behind Aubrey Burks. Then at the cat safety, looks like Anthony Wilson's going to hang on to the starting role, but I've got Floyd there with him testing him. And then, of course, kicker and punter remain the same. Michael Hayes is the kicker, Oliver Straw as the punter. So that's my projected depth chart for this week, guys. But looks like we got some people hopping in chat now. Didn't know if anybody would come in with it being an early day stream, but I appreciate you guys. I'll catch up with your all's comments real quick before I get out here. But I appreciate everyone that's tuned in here live. Like I said, if you're in here live, hit the like button before you head out, or if you're watching on playback, it'll help us either way. And be sure to subscribe for more WVU content. We've got plenty coming this week and throughout the remainder of West Virginia football season, and of course, basketball season as well. But let me catch up on your all's comments before we get out of here on this September 18th CRW live stream. Kenny, what's going on, man? Appreciate you tuning in and chiming in as always. He says he looks for Nico's game plan will be better this week. He'll be better prepared. You notice he thinks the team runs better with Nico. That's interesting. It is, he does have a little bit of a sense of something to him, that it factor. And we've talked about that in the past. Things did seem to operate smoothly. His initial drive, I'm sure he probably had some nerves going and stuff. And I was a little worried, as a lot of people were, but following that first drive, and that's what I was telling people that were sitting around me at the game, he really settled in. And I loved the way that he managed the game because, he finished 6 of 9, but he started, I think, 0 of 2 or 0 of 3. So from there on, he was, 90+%, if not 100% on the passes that he did get a chance to throw. So, West Virginia, like I said, only threw 11 passes in the game. Got to think with him there at the helm, that will go up a little bit, probably, maybe looking at 15 to 20, although this will be a run heavy team, I believe. I don't think it's going to be 50 plus runs versus, 10, 11 passes moving forward, although it will be more predominantly run. But certainly I agree. I think Nico will look better with a full week to prepare as the starter. And that's something Neil Brown talked about as well, having to cut down the play sheet when you had a guy that only got 25% of the reps all week. But this week he's getting, the full starters worth of reps. So certainly I think we'll see better from him, if he does make his first collegiate start this week, which it's looking like he will, in my opinion. But I like Nico. We know he has a high ceiling for a reason. He's going to be a really good player, and it's going to be fun to watch him just before our eyes get better and better as the season progresses, if he does continue to, be the quarterback for the Mountaineers moving forward. David Cummings, appreciate you, man, tuning in and chiming in as always. He says that was one hell of an atmosphere from the parking lot to the stadium. I haven't seen Mountaineer Field like that in a long time. That was a huge win for the good guys. Could not agree more. That place was rocking. And shout out to the students as well. They were in there early and they actually stayed for the whole game. I hadn't seen that in a long time either. 100% couldn't agree more, David. When I was in there, man, it was the loudest game I've been at since – I talked about, 2011 LSU was kind of my measuring stick. I wanted it to hit that. And I think at times it was every bit of that. So to me, it was certainly probably the loudest game in at least a decade for West Virginia. I know there were some mixed in there that I've heard were pretty loud. Oklahoma 18, Oklahoma 16. Tech a couple years ago, they said it was pretty good atmosphere despite it being a nooner. But, I didn't get a chance to go to any of those. From the ones that I've been, since – like 2011, LSU is the last one that's comparable for me. And just having that night game atmosphere, that feel in the air back in Morgantown was really awesome, because it's a sense you can really feel it. That Morgantown nighttime magic is real. And I was glad to see it back in effect, and the team really fed off of it. And I think that energy was real. And it's a big reason West Virginia, was able to shut Pittsburgh out of the end zone and perform, better than a lot of people expected, but ultimately, get that sweet, sweet revenge we were all hoping for. And that energy was certainly palatable, and it was awesome, David. It really was. Grant Wiley Esquire says, speaking of Hayes, it's so nice to put the ball in the end zone. Absolutely. Absolutely. You got that right. Have to wonder if Floyd will play any at corner. WV Football Going Deep asks. That's something that I wondered as well when they were talking about promotions and demotions, and I knew he was coming back and had experience there. I don't know if they'll do it, though, because it seems like they were talking a lot in the offseason prior to his injury that he had finally adjusted to the safety position. So, hopefully it doesn't come to it to where they have to, but I think they're certainly probably keeping that in their back pocket just in case, it would arise. And if problems do persist for Wilson Lamp and they're not feeling like Spells is ready yet, because, just reading the tea leaves, it seems like there's not a lot of faith in those two guys at this moment. And it seems like there was a lot, obviously, in Wilson Lamp to make him a starter going in. But, following those first three games, they've lost a little bit in him. And especially when you look at them not playing any other corners, any snaps in this game against Pittsburgh, certainly something to keep in the back of your mind. Marcus Floyd potentially getting reps there, because it looked, if I'm not mistaken, when he was on the field with Burks and Wilson. So they're certainly toying with some things with him. David Cummings says, I still have no voice. I know you can tell mine probably sounds a little bit different than usual. It's not as bad. Mine finally started coming back like late yesterday. But if you go and watch, if you haven't watched it yet, David, go on our channel and watch the player grades video I did for the Backyard Brawl. I did that the next morning following the game, and my voice sounds terrible, man. And it had come back a good bit at that prior. I mean, the car ride home, it was virtually non-existent. I think a lot of people were probably feeling that way by the noise level in the stadium, and it was well worth it, though, right? That's what I said. Certainly, everyone else I think would agree. It was awesome stuff. Luke said, love the atmosphere. Hopefully have a full crowd this week too. Yeah, great point, Luke. I want to encourage everyone, head out to Mountaineer Field this weekend as well. It's going to be a fun one. And, we have something to cheer for in this one as well. Neil Brown's never beat Texas Tech. We need to finally beat these guys. Haven't beat them in Morgantown in a while now. It's a gold rush game. It's Hall of Fame weekend. You're going to see Bruce Irvin get inducted in the Hall of Fame if you get a chance to go there. And, we know the team really fed off that atmosphere in the Backyard Brawl. Let's do it again. Let's carry that momentum through to the rest of the season. Let's have an awesome home season. There's just a lot of good things in this game to cheer for, not only the revenge over Texas Tech, but also if Neil Brown gets the victory, he would win three games in a row. He hasn't done that yet as West Virginia coach. So it would be another stepping stone for him, another, something to put off in his corner and, as a check in his corner right there. So, that's another reason to cheer right there. And West Virginia would be 3-1, guys. When's the last time we were 3-1? I got to do some research, but got to think it's been a while. So certainly encourage you guys, head out to Mountaineer Field again this weekend. Let's recreate that atmosphere and see if we can have it lead to another West Virginia win and maybe parlay that into a successful season moving forward. But I'll be here to talk about it with you guys all along the way. Really excited to do so. I'll be back again early next week to do the snap count stream post that Texas Tech game, and we'll talk about injury updates and depth chart and take some of your all's questions. But if you didn't get a chance to throw in your question, comment, or whatever live this time, we'll be back again later this week, like I said, where we'll be looking for your score predictions for the game against Texas Tech and taking any questions, comments, concerns you like. Looking like Wednesday or Thursday night for that stream, but follow us on social media for an official update and announcement on when it'll be. As you can see on the bottom there, you can follow us on X/Twitter at WVU Country Roads. We're Country Roads Webcast on Facebook and Instagram. Other than that, this week you can look out for our Backyard Brawl Review podcast. We're going to be recording that later today. Look for it coming probably early tomorrow or some point tomorrow. It's going to be out Tuesday. I can just say that, I guess. And then we're going to be having the Texas Tech, actually. Getting my games mixed up here. Texas Tech preview podcast releasing most likely Wednesday or Thursday. And then, like I said, get your all's predictions and Q&A stream Wednesday or Thursday night. So going to be a fun week. Talk more Mountaineer football and talk about any news that comes up in between there along the way as well. So looking forward to chatting with you guys again later this week and hope you guys tune into the content we'll be releasing in the meantime here on the channel. It's going to be a lot of fun Mountaineer football to talk about this season, obviously, as we get back into the win column. Got the win in the Backyard Brawl. Super excited about it, as I know you guys are, and hopefully we can parlay that into success, use that momentum moving forward in this game against Texas Tech and get a win over the Red Raiders that we so desperately need and, are well overdue for. So looking forward to talking about that one with you guys throughout the week and talking about more Mountaineer football news as well. But appreciate you guys tuning in to this September 18th CRW live stream. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. And until next time, let's go Mountaineers.